January 22nd, 2020. Joe here at Simple Life Show, where the simplest answers are usually the best. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the good social media stuff to keep the rational and the centered voices out in front where they belong. I will not be talking about what you think I'm going to be talking about today, which is the Senate impeachment trial. I think this is, we all know at this point, no matter what side of the aisle you are on, how this is going to play out. I don't know if there's going to be witnesses and stuff like that, or any new witnesses for that matter. I know that the Democrats, and this is the only thing I'll say about it, the Democrats are ill-prepared for the Senate trial. I think that the Republicans are going to have a heyday with it. And if they do have any kind of witnesses and they kind of cave to the pressure of the Democrats, I think we will have a brouhaha as far as witnesses are concerned. I think that it will go on and on and on. It might be even as long as the Clinton impeachment trial. Hopefully not. Hopefully we can actually go forward, and concentrate on better things, because there's a lot of things in the news. Really, what I want to talk about is an article that just came out. There has been a first U.S. case of Wuhan coronavirus, and it's been confirmed by the CDC in Washington State. Now, if you know anything about pathogens, you know that these things do happen from time to time, quite frequently. In the past, it hasn't been so bad because transportation, population numbers, and so forth haven't been quite a huge issue. Now, we are living in more tightly knit community areas, and things are just a little bit harder to control as far as pathogens go. And this is really just something that we really need to pay attention to, because the more that we don't pay attention to it, when it becomes an issue, then it will be a lot harder to control. It's just like anything else. Preparedness is the key. It's the Boy Scout motto: always be prepared. But it seems like we are not very prepared for this sort of thing. And as warfare continues, as a struggle between countries and so forth, and division also becomes more of an issue between different countries, I think that those who do wish to see harm come upon us will be looking towards bio-terrorism and other types of things, especially as technology gets better. We are seeing a lot of these viruses that are very resistant to a lot of the methods that we do have of controlling them. And this is going to become worse. So this is the first U.S. case of Wuhan coronavirus confirmed by the CDC. This is from CNN. The United States has its first confirmed case of a new virus that appeared in Wuhan, China last month. The U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention announced Tuesday the coronavirus has already sickened hundreds and killed 6 people in Asia. So this is 30 to 5. I think it's 300, 400 people have been affected by this virus already. I think there's only one here in the U.S. Trump has recently came out and he has said, hey, there's nothing wrong here, nothing to see. And I really don't think this is a position that Trump should be taking, because he does not work for the CDC. He does not work for the World Health Organization at all either. I think that he should always be concerned as far as being prepared for a pandemic, because the percentage, I had to actually look this up, as far as the odds go on a pandemic happening in the United States, we're talking worldwide as well, is 1%. Now, we haven't really had one technically that has killed millions of people, and this is what I'm talking about, millions of people. We have types of viruses that get out of control and stuff like that. They kill a few dozen people, we get them under control, but we're not talking about a total pandemic here. We're not talking about the smallpox of hundreds of years ago that just wiped out. We're not talking about the bubonic plague or the Black Death, stuff like that killed millions of people. Yeah, we are technically overdue for that sort of thing. Of course, our technology and how we mitigate these disasters, we're able to mitigate them through our technology and our preparedness. But the problem is that we are not really prepared for what's going on. Gamey, this is from Houston Chronicle. This was from 2018. And they said that the odds of a pandemic just increased. What was really interesting here, it says, I'll read here, a few days ago, I joined several thousand global health practitioners researchers, activists, and policymakers at a conference in Bangkok titled "Making the World Safe from the Threats of Emerging Infectious Diseases." One of they said what was really interesting. They said the new estimates are much higher than previous studies have suggested, and they point to the need for us to step up our efforts to prepare for the next pandemic. So it was troubling to learn that the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, and Prevention is planning to scale back efforts to prevent those very diseases. This is really important. It says the CDC's actions come amid expectations that the United States will let lapse $600 million in funding to combat global outbreaks, which was appropriated in 2014 at the highest of the catastrophic Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Yet there is considerable evidence that this emergency funding worked. In West Africa and other parts of the world, the CDC has trained disease detectives to diagnose, prevent, and contain outbreaks. The problem when there's these pathogen outbreaks and disease outbreaks and pandemics that form in these areas, a lot of times these areas are just ill prepared to handle these types of situations. And since if we're talking about Ebola, usually the Ebola it has a very, very low. A lot of people are scared of Ebola. And they should be. Obviously, it's a very terrible disease. It has a very short lifespan inside of your body because it kills you so fast. The problem with Ebola, and the reason why Ebola would probably never be a pandemic, is because it has such a quick gestation period inside of your body, inside of the human body. You can get it, and within probably a few hours to probably 24 hours, you will be showing symptoms, and maybe a few days later, you'll be dead. It's really hard to spread that disease. You usually have to be within very, very close proximity to another person to spread a disease like Ebola. The problem is that it's only a matter of time, and there's probably still a lot of diseases out there. It's a fact there's a lot of diseases out there and pathogens we have not heard of. We're discovering them every single day. So the problem comes into where there is a pathogen that has a long gestation period and kills you very quickly once it gets fully developed inside of your system. That pathogen, I guarantee you, is in some sort of pig. It's in some sort of animal life out there that has yet to be transferred to humans. And the problem with this is that, yes, if as long as it's in the animal genome, sometimes the animal can live and they're just carriers of the disease, and that's fine. And they can live with it. But once it comes in encounters a human genome, then it can be very, very deadly and be spread very quickly. So this, when I was thinking about this, the problem really comes into the fact that there's a lot of deforestation. Recently, of course, in Australia, we're seeing a lot of the burning of the rainforest, and I can almost guarantee you that this animal that's out there, if it's not going to be a man-made, weaponized, biochemical type of pathogen, it's already out there in some sort of animal. So when we have deforestation, and we have a lot of these animals that are transferring and moving and migrating from place to place, they're going to have a better chance of coming into contact with humans. And once this happens, of course, if it is that type of virus and that type of pathogen where it does have a long gestation period, then what's inevitably going to happen is that when people carry it, they might carry it for weeks, maybe even months, and they will end up giving it to other people as a result. And of course, you see where that happens. We have an exponential spread rate, and after that, it's going to be extremely hard to contain. And the problem is that we're not putting enough money and effort into this. There was a report that recently came out from the global, I think it's called Global GPMB, Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. And this came out, I believe, I don't know if there's a date on here. I think it's 2018. It could be 2019. Yep, 2019. This was a World at Risk annual report on global preparedness for health emergencies. This was a report basically that says that we are ill prepared for a pandemic. This is something that we have to put more money into, more preparedness into, because if a pandemic actually hits, if it's something that is not like Ebola or H1N1, because H1N1, I think the actual flu is probably more dangerous than H1N1. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's not. It's either less or it's not as much dangerous than the common flu. Of course, for some people, especially in poor neighborhoods and the elderly and people who can't get the type of medication and assistance that they need, yeah, the flu can be very dangerous and deadly. This is something that we really need to focus on. But we're not talking about the flu. We're not talking about H1N1. We're not talking even about Ebola or any of the other types of diseases out there. We're talking about the inevitability that another pandemic or an actual pandemic that could kill millions is just around the corner. And I think that we have to really be prepared, and we need to be paying attention to this type of thing, because once it does happen, it's not something that you can put back in the box again. It's something that it's going to be disastrous. And I mean, we're really worried about terrorism. We're really worried about how bad Trump is and stuff like this. But these are the things that kind of lurk in the shadows that are going to cause a lot of issues. So yeah, we talked about how Trump said the Chinese coronavirus is totally under control. He does not know this. I really wish he would just kind of be quiet when it comes to that. I still love Trump. I still think it's a great guy, but he does not work for the CDC or anything like that. I'm sure he has several advisors and so forth. But we need to be more prepared, and we need to be, if we're going to be throwing money at anything, we need to be throwing money at being prepared for these types of things. Because the more urban we get, our technology can only take us so far. We need to actually be more prepared, because once something like this happens, it doesn't matter how much technology you have. It spreads like wildfire. Look at what happened in Australia. We have all this technology for controlling fires, but it's not so much climate change that did it. It's the fact that a lot of people were not able to fully prepare for a type of disaster like that because of regulations. Now, these other regulations that are, that are preventing a lot of people from, and a lot of organizations from preparing well enough for a pandemic, is what's causing a lot of these issues. Okay, so moving on. Feds investigate cause of norovirus. So there's actually some norovirus outbreak at the Yosemite National Park. This was from a couple days ago on the 20th. So this is just another example that viruses happen and pathogens happen all over the world, including the United States. So it's just, like I said, it's just a matter of time before one of these things, the right type of pathogen, gets going in the right type of environment. And if we know anything from history, then we know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And everything is eventual. So this was actually something from Raw Story. Let me see if I can reload this. Disease fanboy internet slams the NBC conservative for rooting for pandemic to distract from Trump impeachment trial. I thought this was kind of interesting because this is from Hugh Hewitt. If you've never listened to Hugh Hewitt, he is a radio talk show host. He is actually pretty smart. I like him. I don't like him as much as, like, say, Dennis Prager or something like that, but he is pretty reasonable. I think there is a lot of hyperbole in this reporting here. If you actually read the report, it says Hugh Hewitt is once again under fire, this time for almost appearing to be glad. It says almost appearing to be glad for a deadly SARS-related virus that has been diagnosed in a patient in Washington State. Of course, we're talking about the coronavirus. Saying additional diagnosis will take the focus away from the Senate historic impeachment trial. Listen to what he says, okay? This is really what he says. People care much more for their health than theater. I think that is true, said Hewitt via Twitter, referring to Trump's impeachment trial. The SARS-related virus known as the Wuhan coronavirus is named for an area of China where it was found. It has infected more than 300 people and killed 6 in an outbreak that has struck China, Thailand, and South Korea, Japan, and now the U.S. He goes further to say, it's a nightmare to consider and pray that they don't arrive, but more cases of coronavirus in the United States and news cycle fixated on preordained results in the Senate trial will at least be dented, if not broken. So let me reread that. It's a nightmare to consider and pray they don't arrive. Okay, he's saying he doesn't want this to come to the U.S., even though it's technically already here. Maybe it is already controlled. We can only hope. But more cases of coronavirus in the U.S. and news cycle fixated on preordained resulting in Senate trial will at least be dented, if not broken. He is not saying that he wants a virus to kill people, to take the eyes of the public off of the Senate trial. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is another example of how the media is just making up news where there is none. And this is just, I mean, when we're talking about fake news and stuff like that, this is really what it is. All it is saying, okay, well, we'll go with something that's factual, right? But we're going to put it in a very, very negative light, and we're going to try to describe this in a way that it seems very scary to your citizen, average U.S. citizen that only reads the title of news articles. And that is a huge problem because a lot of citizens now in 2020 they just do not read. They're too busy on their phones, or too busy on TikTok or whatever they're using, Instagram, just putting pictures of their food out there. They're not really paying attention to what's going on. We all know that. We're not going to talk about that. So it's going to be really easy to say, hey, we're just going to go ahead and put some sort of negative story out here. It's technically true, but he's not rooting for a pandemic, okay? And it has nothing to do with distraction from the Trump impeachment trial. The whole trial itself is a distraction from everything else. If that's what you want to where they want to go with this, then I would say that would be true, because there's a lot of news going on. There's a possible pandemic happening right now. Hopefully, they will control it, and I would consider the actual Senate trial to be a distraction from the real stories out there that will actually impact your life. And the Senate trial is not going to impact your life. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you, but the Senate trial is not going to do anything, because Trump will be acquitted. Whether you love him, whether you hate him, you have to admit that this whole thing has been a waste of time. Nancy Pelosi and her $10,000 pens that she was using to sign one letter at a time. She was really just kind of just soaking it all in. It's really, I mean, it's for such a somber moment. It's almost like if you were at a funeral or a viewing of a relative, and you were etching your initials into the wood with a rusty knife. Joe was here. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And just laughing it up. I mean, we saw AOC, we saw all the Democrats, we saw Ilhan Omar doing the same thing, just having a good old time with this whole thing, wasting the taxpayers' money. And then when we're talking about these pandemics, guess what? Those who are actually supposed to be putting money into these programs to protect the people who are at most at risk of all these different types of pathogens and infectious diseases, especially in the congested areas of Democrat-controlled populations, they don't care. They live in their ivory towers. They live behind their gates. They have everything sanitized. They say, screw you. Here's a pin. And I say, screw that. I used to be a Democrat. I don't even consider myself a Republican or anything. I consider myself a really pissed off citizen, because the people who are supposed to be representing us and the people who are supposed to be taking our tax dollars to help prevent stuff like this from happening, to help prevent pathogens and different from pandemics from happening, they are not doing that. Here from 4WWL, WWLTV.com. I think we should be worried. Local expert talks about first U.S. case of coronavirus. We first started hearing about this case several weeks ago in China. It goes forth by saying 9 people have died, more than 400 here. What he's really saying, the CDC confirmed a patient traveled through Seattle-Tacoma International Airport January 15th, developed symptoms shortly after. The agency announced that there would be coming days and weeks of plans to share the test with domestic and international partners. He says, I think we should be worried. We should we first started hearing about these cases several weeks ago in China. There have been since reported cases in Taiwan and other places. The WHO is expected to meet Wednesday to decide whether to declare this an international public health emergency. This is really just kind of goes further by saying that we are ill prepared for pandemics. We are not putting enough money into the World Health Organization, CDC, and other types of organizations who have been tasked to help prevent these types of things. and to help control them when they do. It's only a matter of time when this stuff happens. We're spending all of our money on impeachment and stuff like that and proving how Trump is terrible. We're going to end up burning ourselves alive when all of these things continue to happen. All these things are they're continuing to develop in the back, in the closet, and we are just simply ignoring them. But they are still growing. The world knows an apocalyptic pandemic is coming. This is from September 20th, 2019. It says this was from the report I was telling you, independent report compiled at the request of United Nations Secretary General warns that there is a very real threat of a pandemic sweeping the planet, killing up to 80 million people. A deadly pathogen spread airborne at around the world, the report says, could wipe out almost 5% of the global economy. Now, if there was a pandemic, it's not going to affect the economy or so-called affect the economy of the U.S. Of course, these are just projections. There's no way to tell if millions of people die all over the world, how that's going to really affect everything. I think it's going to affect a lot of stuff. Okay, these projections are just kind of ridiculous. I think they're best case scenarios. I think it's going to be a lot worse if something like that actually happens. And this is the report I was telling you about. In this report, there's actually something now. Something was quite interesting here. There was an executive summary actions for leaders to take for these pandemics. The third one was kind of all countries must build strong systems. Heads of government must appoint a national high-level coordinator with authority and political accountability to lead whole of government and whole society approaches and routinely conduct multi-sectoral simulation exercises to establish and maintain effective preparedness. What this exactly means is I'm not sure. Does this mean that there should be someone that's head of everything, including the government and all society? I don't know. Maybe it's just a poor choice of words, but I think that we're at the point now, especially when we're in a system and when we're in a society that is populated and dense as it is right now, and something that's highly technological, highly advanced society. I'm not going to say that we're alien advanced or anything like that, but compared to 100 years ago, absolutely. But I think this is, like I said, this is something that we really need to be cognizant of. We need to pay attention to these types of things because it won't take long if there is a pandemic for it to spread all around the world, because transportation is very prevalent these days, not like it was 100 years ago. So yeah, this is something. Lastly, here is experts testify United States is unprepared for bioterrorism threats. This is from October 18, 2019. In our war on terror, everyone, our enemies are getting smarter. They know that they cannot take us on as far as the military is concerned. They will never out-tank us. They will never out-plane us. They will never out-nuke us. Okay, the only one that can probably come close is probably China or Russia. More than likely, probably China, because they outmatch us pretty much on everything, and they're probably going to be taking over economically soon anyway. So as far as our enemies are concerned, guess what? They are probably going to be going down this road and probably already have gone down this road of bioterrorism. All they have to do is just release a virus and they can effectively destroy the entire world. And if that's not a case of making your enemy stand down and having a mutually assured destruction and the threat of that, it becomes even worse, because this is something that you can't see. You can see a nuclear bomb go off. You can see a missile being released into the atmosphere. You can see tanks rolling down the street. You can see soldiers with their guns, but you cannot see a deadly pathogen when it is released from some sort of device. It doesn't have to be a missile. It could be something that is in a small package or something like that is brought over or maybe constructed. These are real threats. Okay, these are things that we really need to think about. And if it doesn't come from terrorism, or if it doesn't come from an outside threat, something that's man-made, it's going to eventually come from animal sources. So I'm going to leave it there. Keep prepared as always. Always try to keep it simple. This is Joe with Simple Life. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.